you for the intro.
Well, hi, everybody. I am a low-cost Canadian import, pre-tariff. So I'm the RVP for Agentforce for what we call industrial, consumer, and energy. So that's basically anything that's got a physical good that kind of falls into my world. But as you heard, I have been at Salesforce for about 12 years now. I joined at 14,000 employees. We're now, I think, pushing 80,000. I don't know what the number is these days. Who knows? So I've seen a lot of change. And I'm kind of pretty excited to talk about this shiny new role that I've had since February when agents became a thing all of a sudden. So thanks for having us, Brian.
Yeah, and I'm the second, the worser half of the two here.
All right, well.
But we're very blessed to be able to be up here and talk to this great room, hear some great conversations around AI. And so Brian Chan, I'm a senior manager of technical architecture, covering our retail and consumer goods industry. I've been at Salesforce for about 8 years, not quite as much as Lauren, but I think the company had doubled by the time that I had gotten there. So I was around 30,000, and we're pushing, I think, close to 80 now. But in a lot of the conversations that I have, it's really about influencing, providing recommendations to our customers on their AI and data strategy. And so Manish, I don't know where you're sitting now, but as a fellow architect, man of my, man close to my heart, as well, a lot of the conversations that we're having with customers around what are the right strategies in terms of implementing, developing, building on against your AI strategy, and how do we get to that kind of operational efficiency? How do we, to go back to the beginning of this with what Christoph said on one of the highlights around getting to that ROI and making sure that we're delivering on best practices in architecture. And so some of the things that myself and Lauren are going to share today is really about centering on what have we been seeing as we have had these agent conversations out there in the field, how have our customers responded to some of those things, and so what are some of the best practices in terms of making sure that we're delivering to that enterprise grade. And so
let's go. We're going to get crunchy is essentially the summary of what the session's going to be about, because all we do all day is talk to people that are trying to do this live, in real time. We get hands-on and try and troubleshoot and figure out what exactly is going on. And you've heard a couple times, probably today and probably in every meeting that you've been in for the past 7 months, agentic is changing everything. I also want to let you know that agentic is changing nothing. And we're going to hit that continually over and over and over again, because who is using agentic? Us. Right? Humans don't really do so good with change. I don't know if you've noticed that as a species, we're not super great at it. So the things that are changing are just kind of what we have to expand in the realm of considering change management. So data. We're used to structured data, right? We all know how to fill in a field in a CRM. We all love doing it so much. As a sales leader at Salesforce, I am constantly catching hell for not having done that on time. Not so much anymore. We're starting to move into unstructured data. Now I can take my meeting notes and push those directly into somewhere that's going to do that structuring for me. We're kind of changing the logic. We no longer just have the chatbots, which are the deterministic, give me a tree of logic that I mostly trust, kind of sometimes. I'm hearing maybe we don't always super trust, depending on the source material. But it's deterministic. I know what it's going to do. We've now got this capability of going fully non-deterministic and letting the agent run buck wild. So what does that actually mean in terms of where do you set the dial? So that's something we're going to talk about. And then as well as the sort of the UI, the experience of the human that's working with this technology. Is it really, really specifically built for one thing? Or is it something that's going to be significantly declining in cost to actually generate this stuff over time? And also, to Manish's point a few minutes ago, kind of all over the place in terms of where we're using it. So this is what we think about when we think about agents. There's a couple of key parameters, and we've started to define the what a little bit more clearly when you hear the word agent, because generative and agentic are not the same thing. But a lot of the time, especially folks that don't live and breathe AI all day, every day, they kind of think they are. They think ChatGPT is an agent, and it's kind of not. So a couple things. One, it's got to be autonomous. It can't constantly be waiting for human input. You're hearing about headless or ambient or background agents, right? That's a huge part of the autonomy of an agent, that it should be able to do things when invoked by a non-human or just by listening to signals in the background. It's got to be proactive and reactive. So that's a little bit of that context that we were talking about earlier. It's got to react to what's happening in real time around it. But it's also got to anticipate future needs. If it's not anticipating what you're going to think about next, it's probably not an agent. It's got to be strategic. It has to be analytical. It can't just be a dumb read a document and spit it back out to me in slightly different words using predictive tokens to make it sound like you're speaking English to me. It's got to actually think and plan. So you've got to have that RAG, that recursive logic to it. It's got to be language aware. So we can't just be, looking at an LLM and expecting it to live in its own little bucket. It's got to be able to understand and generate outside of its own little bucket. So it's got to be able to pull in that context. It's got to be context aware. So we're going to get into this one a bit more, but it's got to understand the right enterprise data. So at Salesforce, it should understand that I work in industrial, consumer, and energy, and it should know what my customers do. It should understand who I am, what my role is as a user, what I'm allowed to do and what I'm not allowed to do, importantly. And it's got to have that external data. It's got access to my Workday. It's got access to Concur for all of that information that I need when I'm doing my job, which is very different than what Brian needs when he's doing his. It's got to be adaptive. We all know what machine learning is. We're going to keep moving through that one. It's got to be goal-oriented. Oh my God, this is the biggest lesson that we've learned. If it's not goal-oriented, don't do it. Just stop right now. Throw it away. That said, the goal can be learning. The goal does not have to be revenue. The goal does not have to be cost takeout. The goal can be enablement, training, learning about what your enterprise needs. So goals are important. They don't always have to be financial, but you gotta have them. And then it's gotta be collaborative, right? It can't live in its own little bubble, people, other agents, other softwares. So on the next slide, we've sort of broken this down into a couple key ways when you think about how you are going to agent. There's a couple things that you gotta think about. First of all, we always, if you've seen a Salesforce presentation, you've heard us talk about trust. I think one of the most important things that we've learned from the field is if you don't start at the bottom, if you don't start with, can I even trust this thing? You're gonna get a hard no from the rest of the organization, right? If you think about some of the companies early on in this adventure that learned the hard way, that if you give the wrong access and the wrong data to an agent and set it free in the world, some of the disastrous things like free airline tickets or brand demolition that can happen. So you gotta really think about what trust means for your organization in terms of data and in terms of access. So then we start defining what exactly the attributes are. First, role. What's its job, right? Straightforward. Y'all have job descriptions. I got a job description. Agents need a job description. It shouldn't be, to the earlier point, you only do this one tiny little thing. But it also shouldn't be, you're the CEO of the company and you can do whatever you want, right? Get a little bit more specific. Second, data. Yes, that's the hard part. We're not blazing past that. But deciding what data it has access to is a really critical part. And then deciding how much data actually needs to be cleaned before you can move forward with that agent. You do not need to clean 100% of your data before you start playing around with agents, because if you wait to clean 100% of your data, you're never gonna have agents. There is no such thing as 100% clean data, and that's one of the things we've learned from the field, is if you're waiting to boil the ocean, you're probably never gonna get there. So being really, really defined in what data matters and what data you can kind of leave out for the purposes of moving a little faster. Actions. That's the part where it actually goes and does the dang thing. We've heard about summarization as an action, populating fields. That could also be running workflows or reaching out to other systems in the back end. Guardrails, the things that you do not do. We're going to go into those in a little bit more detail in a second. So those are sort of the how you build the agent and what you think about. Channels is where the human element starts to really come into it, right? Is this something that's going to be a conversational agent? Then I'm going to put it in text or in a chat window or eventually in a voice window when that latency period gets a little bit better than it currently is. So something where I've got the ability to push it out into the world wherever my user is. We use it in Slack quite frequently because, of course, we do. Or is that going to be something that's headless? Is the channel something that is just invoked via API? So it's the where did they work? If you can answer all of these questions, then you have enough to start building an agent and start learning.
And where we see a lot of our customers actually go and actually start agenting is they go down that approach of, I'm going to go and explore. I'm going to go look at some LLMs. I've heard of this ChatGPT thing, and so maybe I'll go and use those models. Just by a show of hands as well, as you're all, have implemented or delivered or started working with agents. Who here has tried to go down the route of DIYing your own agents? And so this is like going in, trying to build your own, researching it, like maybe setting up an environment somewhere. And so when you go down that route, it gets real. You have to start identifying, all right, where is my conversation going to happen? Is it going to be in Slack? Is it going to be in WhatsApp? Is it going to be out on a portal on my own site? And who has access to that? Are there analytics that are going to need to be driven? We talked a little bit about observability before. Manish had shared about some of the patterns around how are my agents performant? What is the data behind the responses that my agents are providing? And so providing that, looking for systems or tools like Credo AI as an example, provides you with some of that observability. Do I need to integrate data? And so, MuleSoft, does it need to use platforms like Workato? Is there proprietary integration and APIs that need to support and provide data and access to my AI agent in order for it to be able to do its job? And then we go down, that stack of understanding, am I going to use an agent framework to do the development? Am I going to use one of the traditional infrastructure providers, like AWS or Azure? Although I guess the Copilot conversation we had earlier, but are we going to use someone like GCP and agent space to actually develop and build out one of these agents? And what are all of the tools that I'm going to go down the route to try to DIY and build out my agent? And so, the dizzying number of different tools and platforms, and if you come from one of these tools or platforms and you don't see yourself here, I'm sorry, we didn't include you on this one. But there's constantly new players that are coming out from ecosystem, from a marketplace perspective, in terms of supporting and building out AI agents. I think there's something like the statistic of a new AI company pops up in San Francisco once every 4 hours or something like that. Maybe
Over
not
600 so far this calendar year.
Yeah, 600 so far this year. And so there's not enough space on the slide to include all of the different platforms and tools and all of the different tooling and types of things that you need to go and DIY your agent. And so where do we really start in terms of thinking about what is necessary for me to go and build, develop? What's the framework that I'm going to apply for what I need to actually go and construct that agent? And so some of the things that we're thinking about at Salesforce around how do I take to what Manish said, is developing and building AI agents, is that a new framework, or are there frameworks or are there areas and parts of the architecture that we can be applying and looking at in terms of developing and building out those agents? And so that first layer, where is the agent going to be interacting? And so that could be through voice, it could be again, in a digital channel, in a mobile app, in a portal. It could also be interoperating and interacting with other agents. And so it could be an Agentforce agent communicating with an agent that lives inside of Workday, that was built inside of Google's or GCP's agent space. And so we're defining out and rolling out some of those models for how we operate, how we communicate and share data, responsibility, and actions between all those agents. And so defining out that interaction layer is what we see as kind of that top layer of where are my users, am I doing this in a headless way? How are my agents going to communicate and operate with one another? And then comes the governance and the supervisory layer. And so making sure that you, in terms of your DevOps process, that you've got a framework, you've got the right visibility so that when you actually go and deploy your agents, you've got visibility and you understand what's happening. Is my agent, again, performant? Is it taking 7 seconds, 10 seconds, 20 seconds for an agent to actually respond, to a prompt that comes in, and then making sure that we're doing and applying that continuous improvement, continuous development process, to that development process for the agent. And then in the agentic layer, it's making sure that we're also engaging, we're working directly alongside of our internal teams as they're developing, as they're building out that agent. We're also embedding and bringing in our research, any development that you might be doing internally, but then, how does our customers interact with those agents? How does our internal teams, applying and providing those tools to our own internal teams to actually develop and build out those agents? And then lastly, that development layer of actually releasing, developing, making sure that we're deploying, those agents and able to test that in the right environments. And so, as far as getting to that maturity model.
Mm-hmm. So who here feels like they have super mature agents deployed in their organization today? Nice. Well, I mean, obviously. But who else? Who doesn't work full-time with agents all day, every day? That feels like they're, right? That's kind of the point. Now, flip side of that question, who feels like the agents that you're starting to build today, you're going to throw away by the time you get to where the experts are? Maybe. I'm going to disagree with you. Shock. The idea behind agentic maturity that we're learning is that there's no such thing as you only need to be in one of these levels of maturity. If you think about what agents do, right? An information retrieval agent is an FAQ bot. It is go look at this knowledge base and answer my questions about the products that are contained within it. It is I don't know what my benefits are and I want to go get my teeth cleaned, so tell me what I can do about that. When you think about that agent, is that ever not going to be useful? Probably not. Maybe it won't be the only agent that someone interacts with, but it is still going to be valuable in and of itself. The secondary agent then becomes, okay, we're going to orchestrate across a single domain. So we live in Salesforce all day, every day. I am maybe working on an R&D program with somebody, and there are a couple of customers that want to be a part of that R&D program, get access to some beta stuff. So we're going to be orchestrating across our R&D programs, across our account object, across our contact object, and we're going to do multiple different things, low complexity in a single environment. So that's not just ask me a question, that's look cross-object, and that's start doing things that are a little bit more complicated that you might have traditionally not automated just because the juice wasn't worth the squeeze of actually going through and building out the deterministic flow of what needs to happen every time, right? So both of those agents are still valuable. I need to know if I can get my teeth cleaned, and I need to know that my R&D projects are moving along nicely. So then you start thinking about, okay, now that I've nailed those things, complex orchestration, multi-domain. After I go through my R&D project, it goes really, really well. I'm so excited. I throw my computer up in the air in joy, and it smashes down a flight of stairs, and I need a new computer. I don't want to log into another system to log that ticket. I want to live, right? I feel you. You feel me. I want to live where I live. I live in Slack. I want to be in Slack. I want to talk to an agent in Slack that knows who I am based on my Salesforce profile and can go out to ServiceNow and say, asset, we need some help, and go speak to another agent in another domain, and then come back to me where I started in Slack. So that complex orchestration across multiple domains, that's a different flavor of agent. And I still need to know if I can get my teeth cleaned, so I'm not killing that agent yet. This is where we eventually want to end up, multi-agent orchestration. We've heard this called the single agent layer. We've heard this called a couple different things today. That everyone's got different names. We haven't decided as an industry what these are called yet. I'm calling it multi-orchestration because that's what the slide says. But essentially, I want the Lauren agent, right? I want to be able to go into whatever the UI of the future is, and I want to talk to the Lauren agent. I want to ask it about my teeth cleaning, and I want it to go to that other agent and ask it. I then want to say, I threw my computer down the stairs, pretty please. While I'm getting my teeth cleaned, can you go talk to my IT organization and get me a new one provisioned? And then I want that to ping back to my manager in her Katie agent and have the Katie agent say, hey, Lauren wants a new laptop because she threw it down the stairs. Should we give her a crappy one because she tends to throw her laptop down the stairs a lot? And Katie can say, yeah, maybe give her an old one so that we don't spend too much money on Lauren's laptops that just get thrown downstairs. So the point that I want to make here is you don't have to be ready for all of these to be ready for this. You don't have to make the decision today on what that multi-agent orchestration Lauren agent looks like in order to know that there are valuable agents that you can start building today and learning from. So what we want to encourage you and what our customers have learned and told us is don't wait because it's not perfect. Learn now how to get to perfect. That's our take on agent maturity.
Hopefully the Lauren agent also lies on your behalf and says, well, it was an accident. And
it wasn't. I threw it. I didn't want it anymore.
At least the human's more honest, yeah. Oh, this is you.
Oh, this is me.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm back. When we hear from our customers about what exactly it is that we do or that any agentic platform provider is going to do around that foundation of trust that I talked about a few minutes ago, the answer that we have to give is not everything. There's a really important reason for that. If you think about what our responsibility should be as the vendor, as the provider, as any vendor or provider, you want to make sure that we are doing the innovation so that you don't have to do that 90% of the back-end grunt work, because that's not the core competency of your business. The core competency of your business is insert your vision statement here. Our vision statement is we do that back-end stuff so you can do the stuff that you do. That's kind of our vision statement. So that means innovative and secure solutions, what Brian walked through earlier with the massive amount of technology that you'd have to build out to DIY from the ground up. We also are responsible for preparing you for evolving threats. Who's familiar with prompt injection? Probably a good chunk of people in the room. So the concept of prompt injection is essentially a bad actor interacting with one of your agents and giving it instructions that are specifically designed to subvert its security, get around it, get information that they're not supposed to get. Prompt injection is something that we should be protecting you from. You should not have to think about that. That's on the responsibility of the vendor. And then when you think about access and uptime and data and systems, there's a reason that you do not have a warehouse full of stack that you have to maintain. It's because we do that and let us take care of that. We have economy of scale around it, so we should be ensuring your uptime. But there are things that you need to decide, and you should decide. What controls specifically do you want to have in your business? The Lauren agent knows Lauren's role, but maybe you don't have a Lauren. Maybe you have a Laura, and she has a slightly different requirement around what her RVP type of permissions are. So you need that specific amount of control that's declarative. You need to declare not just what my data permissions are, but also what I'm allowed to use, how often I'm allowed to use it, and how performant you really care that it is, right? Are we going to invest a lot of money in making sure that my dental cleaning agent gets me an answer in sub 0.2 seconds? Probably not. Who cares? And then finally, the data integrity and resilience. That's something that we've got to have governance around, and it's our responsibility to help advise. But at the end of the day, your data is your data, and that's a big part of our underlying premise is we don't want to be responsible for your data because we don't want to sell your data because that's not our product, and that's one of our underlying pinnings of trust.
Yeah, and so what Lauren's talking about around that shared responsibility, that shared trust layer that you co-develop with any of your partners, regardless of if you work with us, of course we would prefer that, but if you work with us regardless or not, those are parts of that trust layer that needs to be built on. In addition to that, in establishing that trust, in iterating and building on top of your agents, it's that observability, it's the monitoring capabilities that also are required to make sure that. Again, I think I've said the word performant maybe more times in this presentation than I do in my day-to-day, but making sure that the Lauren agent that is responding to the dental cleanings, that there's real-time analytics, there are dashboards that serve and that allow you to report on the performance, on how that agent is interacted with. How many times does Lauren hit up the Lauren agent, or does some service hit up the Lauren agent because of all the laptops that she throws down the stairs? Can I get live or real-time engagement on the types of responses or the latency that happens during a session, during a conversation? And so having the right tracing and monitoring. But then also keeping the human in the loop as well, and that omni supervisor, that person who, we want to make sure that we are keeping our humans, keeping the service agents, keeping the people that are behind these agents as well, that the agents help them to do their jobs better, that we have someone that is able to understand and look at, all right, where is this conversation potentially not going super well? Is Lauren really angry or really upset because the Lauren agent right now is making her get a new or old laptop instead of a new laptop? And so at what point does the human actually need to go back and jump into the conversation, or when do we need to escalate as part of that? And then lastly, how are the interactions going? Is there a feedback mechanism? Is there a feedback loop as well in terms of how we improve those conversations, improve the way that our agent is performing? Do we need to, we talked a little bit earlier about striking the balance between how much is too much data versus mitigating against bad performance on an agent. And so do we need to reduce down the amount of data that we're grounding the agent with, or do we need to increase the amount of data because it has a higher rate of bad responses or incorrect responses? And so striking that balance, making sure that you've got all of the monitoring and analytics that provide you with that ability to reshape or reframe your agent. And so we talked a little bit at the very beginning around the elements of what makes an agent. And so part of that in establishing that trust layer is also defining the guardrails. And we look at guardrails really in three different patterns. One is that preventative, and so that's your proactive guardrails. making sure your agent doesn't have permission to do stuff that it shouldn't do, like, I don't know, rescheduling Lauren's calendar, or trying to put a calendar invite on Brian's calendar that Lauren doesn't have permission to, and making sure that we're automating some of the process around limiting down or preventing our agent from doing things that it's not supposed to be doing. There's the runtime guardrails, and so Lauren mentioned prompt injection, and so this is the oversight while the agent is performing, and making sure that you're putting in place, is there proactive monitoring? Are there alerts? If someone is trying to make the agent or force the agent into a behavior, like designing a rebate for an airline that doesn't exist, or creating a discount that it shouldn't be doing. And so how do you make sure that you're setting up the rules and the permissioning at runtime while that agent is performing? And then the self-improving guardrails, which is, again, that iterative process for making sure that we're identifying, we're updating the rules as the technology around agents, and as a human race, we can't have nice things, and so of course we're going to go and try to break things, and so making sure that we have that continuous improvement, we're flagging where there's potential abuse, and then we're reiterating on improving those guardrails constantly with those agents, and we do that internally with all of our agents as well, and so we have our own concept. Well, I mean, it's a well-known concept, but red teaming, and making sure that you've got a team in place internally as you're deploying and developing out your agents to go in and let's just see what we can break. It's a fun exercise, for an afternoon for a team to go in and do that.
I do love breaking an agent. It is a lot of fun. All right. In summary, here's some stuff that our customers are telling us they want us to keep doing, do more of, do differently than we've been doing. We did not nail it on the first go-around. No one does. So first things first, customers want more deterministic control. This is, Manish, the question that we were just talking about right at the end of your session. If you want 100% deterministic, build a chatbot. It exists. You can go do it right now. Build a workflow, right? Do you want entirely non-deterministic? Build a little unicorn agent that can go off and build dreams for you. What we want is that dial, right? We want to be able to dial up and dial down the determinism depending on each individual agent and what its purpose is and what access it has and who it works with. So you probably trust me with a little bit more of a non-deterministic agent because I'm writing sales emails. But when Brian is building out a technical architecture diagram and he's asking for help, you probably want it a little bit less deterministic or a little bit more determinist. Non-determinism for me, determinism for Brian, because his job is a little bit more crunchy and technical than mine, so he's got to have a little bit more certainty and a little bit more repeatability, right? Second, data ingestion and accuracy. This just comes down to how much control do you have over parsing. At the end of the day, an LLM is just reading and predicting what the next token, the next character, the next word, the next sentence is going to be. How granular do you want to get in looking at the data that you've uploaded and deciding how granular that parsing should be so that your predictability of what the next token is going to be is more and more refined. Now, the more granular you get, the more complicated it gets, the more data you're utilizing and actually processing that, the worse latency you got to think about, but your accuracy gets better. You want a dial for that. You don't just want one size fits all, and that makes a lot of sense. Agent to agent, you should be able to play with that. And then third, look at all of these fantastic, beautiful AI tools. Why can't I have AI tools to build my AI tools so that I can AI while I AI? So building that AI-assisted setup and scaling tools right into the platform is kind of a no-brainer that we didn't necessarily do on the first iteration that's now available in a lot of our tooling. So this is kind of directionally what our customers are saying just about Platform 101. This is the stuff that we want so that you all can go actually build something on a trusted platform.
I know we've only got a couple minutes left, and so I'm not going to go too hard on this slide.
We're going to spend 25 minutes talking about this diagram.
This is my indulgent slide as the nerd in the room, talking about what does it take to actually build out, or as we think about designing, architecting, and building out an agent that has the ability to do multi-vendor orchestration or multi-agent orchestration or have agent interoperability, whatever we end up calling it from an industry perspective. I'm sure it'll change in the next couple months or couple weeks or couple days, but making sure that you've got the tools in place, whether it is leveraging MCP, it's the ability to communicate from agent to agent as well. And so we do live in a world where I think Manish or may have said earlier as well. I keep coming back to you because again, architect.
It's the good stuff.
I liked your content, but when we're going into a world where every platform, every tool has their version or their flavor of an agent, and so so how do we make sure that we are architecting and developing a system that is open, that leverages the best that all of these tools, all these platforms are building into their agentic tooling. And so that communication, designing, and having that live inside, we think about that from a Salesforce and Agentforce perspective, but in terms of how we then apply that out to our larger ecosystem, designing and building out that architecture, similar to this, where you can leverage and take advantage of those tools.
And you should. Don't have one AI vendor, please. I know we're being recorded, so for the purposes of Salesforce PR, this is a Lauren opinion. There's not a single technology in your business where you have one vendor that does everything for you. And AI is no different. So just make sure that you're thoughtful about where do your users live and how do we get that human element moving forward. That's what all this orchestration and that's what all these protocols are about, is you shouldn't have to aggregate it all into one single AI omni server Skynet situation, because that's not how humans do. We've got different needs and we've got different tools to suit those needs. Okay, getting started on the agentic journey. This is kind of the learning loop that our customers are having the most success with. Step one, figure out something you want to do that's fun. Identify an area for improvement. Does it have to be perfect? Does it have to have success factors defined? Yes. Yes, it absolutely does. Can that success factor be non-financial and you're just learning something from it? There we go. Okay, prioritize. If it's a quick win, it's a great place to start. If you're a little further on that maturity curve and you're at the point where you're building complex multi-domain orchestration, then maybe your quick win is a little bit more complex. But if you're in that early stage of your journey, do not overthink it. Just go with something that's gonna help you learn about the culture of your organization, about where the hotspots are in your data. Start with something that's not gonna ruin lives if it gets it wrong, right? Then find a subject matter expert. Yes, that means someone technical, that means an architect, that means someone in IT. That also means someone who doesn't understand how the internet works, right? We gotta find people who are gonna use this stuff as subject matter experts of user experience. So find your little scrum team of folks that are gonna be a part of this. Then ground it in the right data. Make sure that data is clean. Do not spend 5 years on a data management project. I'm pretty sure that everyone who ever showed up in an organization and said, I'm gonna make your data perfect, has been summarily canned a few years later, because that's just not a possible task. Then go through and improve. Get those real-time feedback loops moving with all of the monitoring and tooling that Brian showed you in the observation phase. Then measure and refine those results over time. So whatever your success criteria was, did we get the thing out of it? Is it still useful? Do we want to tweak this agent? Or maybe I shouldn't have fully disagreed. Do we want to toss this agent and start over again because we've got the tools to do so? And then identify what should that new agent look like. This is the virtuous cycle that you just want to get started. Your complexity gets more and more complex every time you iterate through this cycle. You're going to go through this cycle for every different flavor of agent, for your sales agents, for your service agents, for your IT agents, for your HR agents. So just start the flywheel and start learning. Do not delay on learning. What are some cool stories and examples that you can start learning with? This is the crunchy stuff from our customers. I'm not going to read you this whole thing. If you want to see more about any of these, call us. We're happy to chat through it. Some of my personal favorites. 1, case deflection. I am a millennial. I do not want to wait on hold if I just want an answer to a simple question that's not necessarily publicly available or is a little complex. I don't really know how my car works, but I bet I want to know how to turn off that light and whether I need to take it in. So help me deflect that case by not having to wait on the phone with the car dealership, and just give me an agent to talk to see whether I need to book an appointment. Then if I do need to book an appointment, number 4, scheduling. Oh my God, take that off my plate. If I could have one assistant do everything for me for the rest of my life, it would be manage my calendar. Oh my God. So that scheduling agent is something that can use those parameters, use that data, use those guidelines and guardrails that you've given it to only schedule in the parameters that you want to schedule for the people that you want to schedule with. I also love product recommendation. That's a fantastic one. If I just want to sell the right thing to the right person, but I don't necessarily need a body to explain the perfectly documented product information that I have on my website, give me a conversational agent so that I can talk to it. And then when we're going through that process of things like onboarding or lead qualification, and we need to do some background research work, give me an ambient agent in the background to do that sort of stuff. I think we got a couple more customer use cases in here. Oh my gosh, also use templates. 90% of what you want to do probably already exists on the platforms that you want to do it on. We're so crunched on time here, so I'm not going to go through all of those. But if you want to see an example of one of our templates in production, help.salesforce.com, go break it and tell us how you did. But when we put that up there, 86% of the cases that people were reaching out to us about have been deflected and resolved. 29,000 conversations a week from when we first put it up. This is what I'm talking about when I say success guidelines. Does it have to be perfect? No. Do you have to know what you're trying to get out of it? We wanted to measure adoption, and we did. So now we understand how it's being adopted by our customers. We wanted to understand effectiveness. How often were people abandoning it? How often did it actually get resolved? You see in that first one at launch, we didn't have customer confirmed resolution as one of the metrics. When we went through that learning loop, we learned, and at 3 months, we then at the end said, did we solve the problem with this agent, yes or no? And then we had that metric, and then we improved on it at the next iteration. So that's what we mean. Want to do this one?
What's that? I think we should actually take some questions.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah. Although we keep just
We
getting
have customer
more time,
examples,
so
but they keep on
just
putting more time on our ticker, so we'll pause here for questions.
Yeah,
we
we'll
have
pause
some
here for
customer
questions.
examples,
All right,
but
let's do a couple questions.
thank you.
Hands, please.
Oof. We're between you and a break, is that what it is?
Yes. First one over there.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, so in initial days of Agentforce, I heard Mark saying, if you pay me $2 per call, I will take the full responsibility of the call center call end to end. So does that imply that Salesforce is going to guarantee the inference time performance, scaling up and training of the training time, data collection and other things as well, or that model has changed now for the Agentforce users?
If I had a nickel for every time Mark said something fascinating that I didn't fully remember the context of it. So the $2 per conversation model, this is kind of getting into our pricing model and also the evolution of the pricing generally in agentics. I think what you're describing is when we first launched and we were trying to sort of give use case examples out to the market of where digital labor fits. I think that's probably, I don't want to speak for Mark, I think that's probably evolved into a little bit more of an understanding of you don't want us to resolve everything end to end, and that's kind of a lot of what we were talking about around the feedback from our customers of give us a dial on determinism, give us a dial on guardrails, and give us tools for guardrails. So I would say it's no longer give me $2 and I replace an entire end-to-end process for you, and it's now we are looking at a couple of different models depending on your use case that are a little bit more value aligned for the outputs that we're giving you, so more action oriented than just how many times you hit the LLM or the length of the conversation. I hope that answers your question, but anytime someone says, Mark said this, I kind of go, he's smarter than me, I don't really know what he wanted me in there.
Yeah, so I think the question was more towards the infrastructure part, whether customers get the control of that or you manage on their behalf. So it seems like that customers get better control now as the things are evolving.
On the infrastructure thing, it sort of depends, right? If your telephony is through us, then yes, we do control that infrastructure. But when I think about a call center and the number of pieces of infrastructure that go into that, we're not everything in there. I don't know if you wanted to comment on any of the other back-end infrastructure,
Yeah, I mean,
BYO,
I think,
LLM or anything.
I think it ultimately, the way that generally I let her handle all the pricing conversations, but in terms of where you're leveraging infrastructure, if that lives in another conversational platform, if that lives on GCP, AWS, any of those other partners, we do partner closely with those large infrastructure providers to, in terms of just making sure that we're delivering scalability as far as the way that they manage their pricing and manage the costs.
Call me.
Yeah, call Lord, don't call me. But the thing that I generally recommend for any of our customers that are implementing their agents, go through some of those that definition loop that we showed in the slide earlier, and just identify, all right, what are the actions that my agent is taking? What are the LLMs, or what are the models, or what are the tools that it's going to be leveraging that exist outside of what Salesforce or whatever platform ServiceNow is potentially offering, and then where am I going to be going out and calling out to some of those infrastructure providers and use that as a way of doing that cost estimation around what is the true cost of this agent, of deploying this agent, and make sure that you're balancing again, maybe again you don't need to access all of the data, or maybe you need to create a more flexible way for that data to be accessible to to your agent.
We are learning that it's not one size fits all.
Yeah, thank you.
I hope that answers.